Okay, we're recording now. Hello, friends. Today I'm speaking with my good friend and colleague, Dr. Mario Baghos. Mario Baghos is senior lecturer in theology. He teaches mainly in the areas of doctrinal theology, Trinitarian theology, Christology, eschatology, as well as patristics, Catholic social thought, and related subjects. From 2010 to 2017 and 2020 to 2022, he taught patristics, church history, and research methodology at St. Andrew's Greek Orthodox Theological College, Sydney College of Divinity. He has also lectured in the disciplines of studies of religion, and that's how we originally met, at the University of Sydney, and theology at Charles University. He continues to publish extensively in the disciplines of patristics and Byzantine studies, specifically in the areas of eschatology and symbolism in Christian art and architecture. Now, I would like to announce that Mario's got a forthcoming book. Is that right? Its
Yes, but the title might have changed
title might
since,
have changed.
yeah.
Okay. What's the title now? I've got Remnants of New Rome. Is it still similar?
No, now it's Remnants of Byzantium, Symbolism, Art and Architecture in Late Antiquity and the Middle Ages. And it's currently under review with Cambridge scholars. So we're looking at mid next year or something like that. It's a labor of love, that one, over several years.
Sounds
Yeah.
really good. Looking forward to that one coming out. Maria, today Maria kindly accepted my invitation to speak about a very important theme, I think, in religious studies in particular, but I think generally in human history or history of ideas, um, one might say, and that's the idea of, if I'm not pronouncing it correctly, do correct me. Katabasis, is that right? Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, katabasis in Greek, katabasis in English. Because I'm half Greek, I confuse. I always stick to the accents in Greek, but actually, you were
Good,
right.
good.
You were right initially. Yeah,
Okay, no, but let's try and I'll do my best to pronounce it the Greek way, but if I can't, I'll just defer
that's okay.
back to the English. So this is an important theme, and it's kind of brought back a lot for me in reading a lot of literature from the ancient historical texts. So this is a descent into the underworld theme. And as I understand it, it's older than Greece. It's older than Homer.
Yeah, it's old.
It's probably one of the deepest mythic structures in human history. Um, its genesis is probably um, ancient Near East, and it sort of covers broadly the conceptions of death initiation, kingship, and cosmic order. So it's all about sort of this going down into hell, if you like, and then sort of re-emerging triumphant in some way, relating to some thing. But we're going to discuss these specifically, and you're the man to do this. And I've learned a lot about this, again, being refreshed from your article. And that was, I just got the title. What's the title of your article? Sorry.
Oh, Twin Peaks and the Descent into Hades motif.
That's it. Twin Peaks and a Descent into Hades motif. Now, we're also going to add a little modern twist. We'll go through the historical stuff and then we'll get into some modern interpretations of katabasis or katabasis. And so we may I wanted to talk a little bit about the new interpretations pertaining to James Joyce, Tolkien, Jung, um,
Mm.
and perhaps even Twin Peaks. Though that is not confessingly not my cup of tea in terms of the TV
Well, you
show.
haven't given it a
However,
shot.
however, I'm willing to be convinced, and perhaps we'll get around to talking about that as well. Just putting it out there, so please don't hate me if you are fans of Twin Peaks.
No, no one will be offended by that. Milad, I didn't get a chance to thank you very warmly for inviting me to speak with you on your podcast.
Okay.
It's a pleasure and an honor for me. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Mario. So just broadly, I'm thinking going by the structure that you sort of mapped in your article. I've just got some kind of broad structure in front of me as well. Just following your mapping. So starting with, I think you started with ancient, Sumer,
Yeah,
Mesopotamia,
yeah.
Egypt, and then going to Greece, and then into there was a touch of Judaism, then Christianity. So with the
And Rome as well.
and Rome, okay,
Yeah, yeah. So this is, I
and so
think,
on and so forth. Yeah.
yeah, this is, I think, very interesting that the great literature, if you look at the Near East and the Mediterranean, and the kind of morphology of the literature that we have that,
Mhm.
consecutively Mesopotamian texts will influence Greek thought, and then Greek thought will influence Roman thought. You can pretty much,
Mhm.
kind of like Theseus navigating the labyrinth with a ball of string. You
Yeah.
can take a string through and see the kind of
Mhm.
lineage
Mhm.
of this motif. It has to come out of human experience. So if you look at Karen Armstrong's book, A Short History of Myth, just as an accessible one,
Okay.
she speaks about Neolithic hunter-gatherers circa 10,000 BC, um, ritualistically burying their dead. Now, we don't have any near contemporaneous texts from that period because, as you and I know, the
Mm.
earliest writing that we have is cuneiform, right?
Yeah,
Which is
that's right.
Mesopotamian. So coming out of the kind of Euphrates basin, that region there, which is modern day, Syria, um, Iraq.
That's right.
And so, what you have is this insight that when these hunter-gatherers did bury their dead and they buried them in the ground, and that just comes out of human experience. If you die, you're laid out on the ground, right? And it's part of the natural cycle of things that the earth consumes the body that is produced from the earth. Um, what can be inferred is that they tried to make that experience as meaningful as possible. So perhaps they interred the deceased with items that belong to them in this life. From that, can you possibly, or could you possibly infer that they could take these items with them in the next life? Well, like I said, we don't have any written evidence. We do from pharaonic Egypt, right? But that's
Yeah.
much later. So, if you look at Mesopotamian civilization, so let's jump to about 3000 BC, about 5,000 years ago.
Okay.
The emergence of the first cities, urban centers. They're not cities in our sense of the word. They're
Mm.
more like temple cities on a micro scale. You
Mm.
have near contemporaneous texts that date from a later period in terms of the cuneiform inscriptions, but we can infer because of the archaeological evidence that points to these cities dating from around 3000 BC, we know that these are old ideas being recorded later on.
Right.
We can infer that these people believed in a heaven and an earth and an underworld.
Mm.
Okay, so this is something that you know, we almost take for granted these days that people believed in a sort of the God is in heaven or the gods are in heaven, and the earth is the meeting place between, the gods above and us humans below, and there's some kind of a subterranean or chthonic,
Chthonic, yes.
right? To use a Greek term.
Yep.
Dimension where the dead do go, right? This is something that you'll find consistently articulated in Mircea Eliade, in
Mm.
his various works, The Sacred and the Profane,
Yeah.
Cosmos, Chaos, and the World to Come, uh, which is no, not Cosmos, Chaos, and the World to Come. It's The Sacred and the Profane is one of them. The other one is The Myth of the Eternal Return.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, so those are the two main ones that discuss how architectural or architectonic objects try to intersect heaven and earth, okay, for these peoples. Um, so if the gods are coming out of the sky, or if the central, let's say, structure of these early Mesopotamian cities is a ziggurat, for example, a step pyramid, which
Yeah.
is kind of a landing pad for the gods, okay? We have heaven and earth represented there. What about the underworld?
Yeah.
We know that people are being buried, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
The underworld shows its face or discloses itself in the earliest extant literary evidence in the Epic of Gilgamesh.
Hmm.
And you and I both know Professor Gary Tromp, who,
Hmm.
you know, ceremonially, let's say, organizes events around the Gilgamesh
That's right.
statue at our alma mater, the University of Sydney, right?
That's right. That's right.
And so
He
the
had
Epic
one
of
recently, right?
he had one. I couldn't make it,
Yeah,
unfortunately, but
same.
he
Yeah.
he he did have one. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the Epic of Gilgamesh is one of these very, very early heroic tales about a demigod-like figure who fights against, chaotic embodiments of chaos, various
Mm,
other gods, and so on and so forth. What's important for our discussion is the death of his buddy, his mate Enkidu, the
mm.
beast man, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Who there are various recensions of this text in the
Yeah.
cuneiform,
That's right.
but he's either tricked to go into the underworld or he goes there to fetch some of Gilgamesh's items, and he
Hmm.
dies within that space. And Gilgamesh is exposed to his apparition, right?
Hmm.
And his apparition laments to him how lonely that place is on the other side of the veil.
Mm,
Now, it's all very cryptic. If you look at the text, it's a little bit ambiguous as to,
mm,
there's no real topographical description of the underworld in
mhm.
the way that you will get with the Greeks
Yeah.
and with the Egyptians before them. The Egyptians are very meticulous
Yes.
because everything in the underworld, if Egypt, Upper and Lower Egypt, are divided into 12 nomes, well, there are 12 nomes in the underworld. It's kind of a reflection of the topography of Egypt, right?
That's right.
Um, and you see something similar later on in the Jewish context with Jerusalem.
Mm.
Uh, Yerushalayim it's in the double, it's a plural, right? It's because there's a celestial Jerusalem upon which the terrestrial one is modeled. Okay, so um, and in that context, there is an underworld that's being restrained.
Mm.
So um, what do we make of all of this? Well, if there was, we don't know, it's hearsay, if there was a real figure named Gilgamesh, right?
Yeah.
You can infer from the experience of the loss of a friend, the first sort of self-conscious reflection on what it might mean
Mm.
for someone who's passed over to communicate their experience of death.
Yeah.
Now, this is all very popular these days in the new age, as you know. And you have, if you go onto YouTube and you just do a bit of scrolling, you
Hmm.
have these NDEs, near-death experiences,
Yeah.
that people speak about. I was watching some of this stuff last night, actually, just thinking about what we were going to talk about today.
Oh, cool.
Um, I don't know what to make of a lot. Well, knock wood, I haven't died and come back. So, as far as I know, there's one who's done that, Jesus. Lazarus, they can add a
Lazarus.
few others.
That's right.
Um,
Yeah, we
but
can.
but you have this common experience of when it's articulated positively
Yeah.
of encountering loved ones on the transition from this life to the next, of a tunnel with a bright light, all these sorts of things. The reason, and there are some negative ones as well, NDEs. The reason why I mention all of this is because in the Epic of Gilgamesh, it is a
Mm.
unilaterally negative experience of the afterlife.
Right. Explain that. So what, why do you say negative?
Enkidu is suffering and alone.
Okay.
And this is something that uh, the only exception to this in the ancient Near East in the and the Mediterranean, as far as I can tell, in
Hmm.
other words, the only exception to a dreary post-mortem experience is Egypt,
Okay.
right? And that's only when the afterlife is democratized for the Egyptians in the New Kingdom period. In the Old Kingdom period and the Middle Kingdom period, the positive experience of the afterlife belongs exclusively to the pharaohs.
That's right. Yeah.
We don't have a lot of information in relation to the Sumerian deities. We know that some Sumerian rulers, we know that some of them, like in the early 2000s BC, Naram Sin was worshipped as a god on earth, right?
Hmm.
Um, he was assimilated to the gods who generated order out of chaos. Um, and he held within his hands the principles of order within the cosmos. But where he goes, nobody knows. Okay, I mean, this is something that is ambiguous within those Mesopotamian chronicles. There are some references to gods coming and giving human beings from the sea. They come and they give human beings knowledge in order to create technology, and they recede again. But you know, the heavenly realm is tied up with the temple structures that they kind of recall the time of origins where you have this amorphous, chaotic space and
Mm.
order emerges out of chaos on these kind of hills, right? That these step pyramids are meant to represent and recall. So you're kind of trying to reclaim the time when the fullness of being was first manifested, when order emerged out of pre-existing chaos,
Yeah.
and that fecundity of being is where the gods are. Whether they're up or down or anywhere in between is very difficult to determine. Um, Things are more clearly articulated in the Egyptian context.
But before we go into the Egyptian context, I just want to cover a couple of things with the Gilgamesh story or myth.
Absolutely, yes.
Um, and I wonder, just for the sake of our listeners, if you're happy to just kind of give a very brief, condensed sort of summary of the story. Is that okay? Are you happy to do that?
Yeah, I only remember bits and pieces, to be honest
Okay.
with you. I only
It's okay.
remember that he goes out in order to fight these dragons and beasts at the behest of the high god, whose name escapes me now, and that he undertakes this journey with his
Mhm.
friend,
Okay.
Enkidu, and his friend is kind of it's like a buddy cop scenario before the buddy cop stuff emerges, right? And that he laments the loss of his friend. My knowledge is limited to that. I haven't
Okay.
explored the text in more detail.
Not a problem. Not a problem. So the my understanding of it, my knowledge also a bit shady on this. But my understanding of it is that it's ultimately so what I remember is that it's a failed attempt. Like he tries to achieve immortality by finding that I think is it a reed or something deep under a river somewhere,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and
That's right.
he goes through that incredible quest and he gets there and he gets it and comes out and he's having a rest and then the snake appears and the snake takes away runs away with the immortality flower or reed or whatever it was.
Yeah, yeah,
um, but I remember like kind of being shocked when I was introduced to this myth that it obviously doesn't have a happy ending in a conventional sense, or in the sense that we will come to later with, like, say, the Christian use of this katabasis theme. So I think so. I remember being shocked by that, and I was like, "Oh my goodness!" Like, so what? There's no happy ending for this poor guy. But then it's not, the message is not that he is supposed to achieve immortality. I think the message, if I remember correctly, in this myth is that it's to accept humanity's fate as mortal, as finite,
yeah.
and thus to focus on the present and the now and to
Y-
value the things that you
Yeah,
have.
yeah.
Um,
Which is common. It's common in that context. I mean, it's a similar thing for the Greeks later on. There are very few of the Greek demigods and heroes who have
mhm.
access to any positive experience of immortality of the afterlife in
There we
the
go.
Elysian fields.
Yes.
If you're a demigod, kind of like Hercules, for example,
Yeah, I want
he
to
had to
talk about
undertake
Hercules.
12
Yeah.
labors in order to be granted
Yes.
access to Olympus, right? Which is
Yes.
very rare. The
Yep.
heroes of the Trojan epic, Agamemnon and Menelaus and all these other figures, the
Hmm.
very best they could do is have a kind of a continuation of the repose and relaxation and respite that we have in this life in
Right.
the Elysian fields, which is underground. It's part of Tartarus. It's part of the underworld. It's part
Yes.
of what we would, in a post-Christian understanding,
Hmm.
construe as hell,
Right.
right? So they're beneath the ground. That's where they're buried, presumably,
Yes.
and that's where their souls go. Everyone else, me, bludger that I am, I'm not fighting any wars, right? I'm not Achilles. I end up a shade. But that had a pessimistic. The Greeks had a
Mm,
pessimistic vision of the afterlife,
mm.
and so did the Romans. It was really the Egyptians, and then later on the Christians,
Okay.
because in the Jewish context, it is split between in the intertestamental literature,
Hmm.
and then in the New Testament we have evidence for a belief in the resurrection among the Pharisees, right?
Yep.
And a disbelief in everything among
Yep.
the Sadducees. They're like Theravadan Buddhists, the bare minimum, please. There's a God who created the world, and that's that. But Pharisees are talking about angels and resurrections and all these sorts of things. So, it starts off pessimistic.
So
You know,
let's hold on to that pessimism in a sense, and perhaps it's a bit of a paradox, not necessarily all negative, because there is a moral story there, and just holding on to that Gilgamesh theme, because as you say, it sort of plays through the Greek themes, the Greek
mm,
myths quite
mm,
strongly,
it does, yeah.
but then it's transformed later. What about Egypt? So again, my understanding of Egypt with Ra that you mentioned in the article
Mm,
is this kind of constant renewal. So this rising of the sun, descending of the sun,
yeah,
going into darkness, and then this cycle is continuous for the sake of creating and maintaining order and harmony in the universe. So it's a daily cycle, right? Just like the sun, literally.
absolutely. That's right. All of these things are anchored in experience. So if you bury people in the ground, that's where the heroes are going to go. If they
Yeah.
die or if they undertake there's both a topographical and a psychological aspect to this, or spiritual, and we can
Yes,
talk about the latter later.
for sure.
But in relation to Egypt, you have a similar thing. So Upper Egypt is in the south of the country, the fertile
That's
Nile
it.
Delta region. Lower Egypt is in the south of the country, and that's the origins of the Nile River. For 6 months of the year, the Nile is inundated, and everything is covered in a watery kind of abyss. And then
Mm.
when the waters recede for the other 6 months of the year, fertile crops begin to emerge in hills first and foremost. So
Okay.
these hillocks were seen by the Egyptians, irrespective of which cosmogonic or birth of the cosmos worldview they maintained,
Yeah.
because different urban centers, again, as Jan Assmann famously said, in Egypt there is no city without a temple. They are temple cities, right?
Yeah.
So whether it's the Heliopolitan or the Theban, it doesn't really matter. What you have is the emergence of order out of chaos, represented by the hill,
Mhm.
a pre-existing chaos, pre-existing matter.
Mhm.
There's no creation of the world out of nothing here, as we have in Christianity later on, that prioritizes God pretty much fundamentally to everything that he creates. Here, the gods are part of the creation. The creation is bigger than them, and it's infinite and it's cyclical,
Right.
right? And it's cyclical because it's based on this seasonal Nile patterns.
Yes.
Okay, so the hills emerge when the Nile waters recede. And in the minds of the Egyptians, you can infer that that happened once and for all at the beginning of time and set off the process, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay, and the demiurge comes out of that chaos. That demiurge, that creator god, could be Ptah initially, right,
Yeah.
which was associated with the earth. But later on, you have a similar thing happening in Mesopotamia. You have the psychopomp of the sun god taking. This is Eliade's terminology, right?
Right.
You have the sun god taking over. In
Yes, sir.
Mesopotamia, it was Shamash, and when Marduk was considered the great hero, a long time after Gilgamesh, right?
Yes.
He was an adherent of Shamash, the sun god, in Babylon. This is in the Babylonian
Yes, we're going
context.
back to Mesopotamia. Huh?
Going back to Mesopotamia, but just to create a parallel. In
Yep.
Heliopolitan religion, well, the
Yep.
Greek term Heliopolis, the city of the sun, it's
Yes.
Ra.
Yes.
And Ra, he kind of, he's got a team with him, right?
Mm, mm.
So
It's a good way to put it.
it's well, that's I mean,
Mm.
he's got his boat, which is the boat of Ma'at, which is order.
Mm.
Best way that it's
That's
personified
beautiful.
as a
Yeah.
goddess. It's
Yeah.
Ma'at. In
Yeah.
Mesopotamia, it was Me or Mez, and these
Mm.
are interchangeable in terms of the singular and the plural. So
Hmm.
Ma'at is personified as a goddess, but it's a boat
Hmm.
that he rides with his baboons of Ma'at that help him to generate order. And he rehabilitates a previous bad guy, Seth, who
Mm.
etymologically we believe is the origin of the word Satan.
Ah, okay.
Okay, according to
Okay.
Norman Cohen and various other scholars, Seth is rehabilitated because the main bad guy is
Mm.
Apophis.
Ah, yes.
Apophis.
Yes, right. Yeah.
And Apophis is a serpent. Now, serpents again on the
Again.
ground.
Mm,
Well, this influences Genesis later on. So they're
mm,
on the ground.
yes.
They bite you. The venom kills you.
Mm.
Um, it's not just Genesis. Later on, Orpheus's beloved
Life.
Eurydice
Yes.
is killed by a serpent bite, a viper. So
Okay.
this is, but the serpent has a double nuance. It's
Yes.
both negative because of the venom and because it moves on the ground, but because it's slippery and tricky and clever, Jesus says, "Be as innocent as doves, but as wise as serpents."
Right.
And you have that assimilated as well to Asclepius with his staff and the serpent wrapping around it, the venom becoming anti-venom and thus a symbol of medicine. So, it's multivalent symbolism, but it's primarily bad, right? In
I'm
this
also
context.
thinking, sorry to interrupt there, but I'm
No,
also
go ahead, go
thinking
ahead.
of the Old Testament Moses epic where he raises a serpent on a cross.
And now you're being very scandalous the way that Jesus was, because Jesus described himself as that very serpent, which which drove away all the other serpents. The brazen serpent that Moses
I knew
lifted
you'd
up
like
to.
that.
As Moses lifted up the brazen serpent, so will the Son of Man be lifted up on the cross. Look, I got goosebumps because
Yeah.
Jesus is saying things that are quite radical, but he is the real
Mm.
apotropeon, the real one who chases away evil in this sense, right? It's epic. What Jesus does with this
Well,
stuff is,
we're going to get there. I can't wait.
yeah.
So let's um let's now enter into the Greek mind, the Greek psyche on this myth. And do we start with Odysseus? Is that the earliest? Um,
Well, let's just be very briefly on the Egyptian because
oh, sorry,
what,
apologies. Yes, you were.
no,
I
no,
interrupted you.
no, you didn't. It's because it's all very exciting and there are parallels and symmetries,
I know. I know.
Every day Ra comes out of
That's right. Yeah.
the east, the east. The sun rises, okay,
Yes.
and as he rises, he generates order, and that's related to our experience being nourished by the sun. We're alive. We can see there's
Mm.
light, and then he descends into the west, which is almost exclusively where the Egyptians buried their dead, where the
Yes.
sun sets.
Yes.
So again, you have a sense of the underground being accessed at
Yeah.
dusk in the west. On the
Mm.
western banks of the Nile are all the necropolis, never on the eastern side of the Nile. If the Nile is the center of the universe, if it is
Mm.
the axis mundi, to use an Eliadian term, you never
Mm.
bury people on the east of that because that's where life is generated, where life descends into the grave.
Mm.
That's where you bury people. And so Ra will descend in order to fight the serpent Apophis in the Egyptian equivalent of the underground, of the underworld, the Duat. And
Mm.
the Duat runs through the 12 nomes of the underground, of the underworld. And the principal one of those is ruled by the god Osiris, who's also assimilated to Pharaoh, but that's another story. We'll leave
Mm.
Osiris out of it. He's the lord of the underworld, right?
Yes.
But Ra has his own autonomy here. And he goes into the underworld and he battles against this serpent who threatens to drink up every day the cosmic waters surrounding the cosmos that emerge from the Nile.
Mm.
Again, you can see Genesis, the
Oh,
waters in
yeah. Yeah.
heaven and the waters in Eden and in the Euphrates, Tigris rivers, all these things. So he's obviously successful every single day because not only does Pharaoh as an embodiment of Ra and a son of Ra, and these things are interchangeable, he can be
Yes.
both and.
Yeah.
Not only does he fight for Ra every day by performing the right rituals, but so do the priests of Ra. And whenever the sun rises the next day, we know that Ra was successful in the underworld. He cut open the side of the beast and he comes out again
Right.
in order to generate order again. If
Right.
the sun ever stopped shining, it was considered apocalyptic, like a disruption in
Mm.
the world order. Okay,
Mm.
and this is very interesting as we will move later to the Judeo-Christian context. But we need to do the Greek and Roman interlude because
Absolutely.
in this interlude you have the kind of narrative structures
Mm.
that you and I, people born in the West, although with mixed heritage,
Mm.
I know you might not have been born here. I was, right?
Mm.
Um, but we know the stories. Yeah, we know how a story functions. There's a beginning, there's a middle, then an end. There's
Yeah.
a crisis that has to be confronted by a hero. Okay, surrealism, postmodernism, all these things have disrupted the traditional narrative structure. But if you can recognize something like what Joseph Campbell called the hero's journey in
Yeah.
Star Wars,
Yeah.
you got to go back to Homer, my
My
friend.
favorite.
Yes, or any of
My cup
those.
of tea, actually.
Yeah, excellent. Good, good. We have that in common. So let's go back to Homer, the blind bard from Chios, from the Greek island of Chios, who's writing
Mm.
uh, maybe in the 8th century BC. Again, difficult to
Yeah, it's
pinpoint
time.
because these things are oral stories that
That's right.
predate him by several hundred years
Mm.
that apparently he recorded. Okay, so
Mm. Mm.
he wrote a cycle of 8 books apparently, but 2 have come down to us. The rest are lost. I think there are reasons why the rest are lost, but we can discuss that another time. The Iliad and the Odyssey. The Iliad is less relevant for us here. It has to do with the Trojan War.
Yes.
Ilus being another name for Troy because it was founded by Ilus, the son of Troas, and he
Okay.
named it after his father.
Right.
There's a lot of interesting stuff happening there. Not a lot about the underworld.
Mm.
The experience of death is described in terms of the gods helping the Greeks fight against the Trojans, and we know this has to do with Paris stealing Helen from Troy and Menelaus and Agamemnon going over and fighting, and it's Achilles' wrath
Mm.
that causes the devastation because his pride is affronted by his colleagues in the Greek camp, and people are dying left, right, and center. And it's not until Patroclus, his friend, is murdered that he enacts revenge on
Yes.
Hector. All right, it's an epic story. It's a phenomenal story. It's very brutal, but every
Yeah.
time someone is dispatched, is killed, they are sent into the world of the shades.
Okay.
Darkness comes on them. Darkness.
Mm.
Um, the underworld stories are elaborated in the Odyssey. What's the Odyssey about? Well, he's a Greek general, Odysseus. We know from Virgil's Aeneid,
Yes.
ironically, right, written 800 years later by the propagandist of the Emperor Augustus in Rome.
Yes.
We know that Odysseus is responsible for the Trojan horse, gets into Troy. The Greeks come out. They
Okay.
do what they do. Odysseus has to get home. It takes him a decade to get home because he's waylaid by the gods. He affronts the gods, Poseidon in particular. He upsets him because he kills one of his sons, the Cyclops.
Ah,
Um,
yes.
and so he's waylaid at every attempt. And it is Circe who captures him in both the story of Odysseus and in
Hmm.
the story of Aeneas later on. The archetypal feminine in its more
Mm.
captivating, capturing aspect
Mm.
cripples the hero.
Mm.
That's not anti-female at all. Like
No.
this is a patriarchal culture, and
Yeah.
you have people, these soldiers, these warriors, taking women as treasure, and that's not acceptable by our standards at all. But it's just what happened, kind of thing. But you have the mystique of the feminine as kind of, well,
Mm.
now the hero's fallen in love and it's hard for him to continue his journey, right? But Circe, she does a little bit worse to Odysseus. She turns his men into pigs and
Yes.
he's kind of in this dream, sleeping with her in a daze. And eventually he breaks out of that, demands that his men are returned to their manhood. And
Mm.
he asks where's the location to the underworld because he needs to find a way back home and to break this curse of Poseidon.
So if I may ask you, do I recall correctly that he's snaps out of that mm, by the aid of Athena?
It's something like that. Yeah, it is. It is. So
So
that's very
another woman figure involved here. This is
another
good.
female. That's
Yeah.
right. That's very important to mention.
Mm.
So Athena is on his side,
Yes.
and this is something that you'll see in Virgil's Aeneid when Queen Dido of Carthage
Right.
ensnares Aeneas, who is a Trojan that goes on to found Rome via Latium. It's his descendants, Romulus and Remus, who go on to found Rome. So that's the way
Yeah.
the Romans tried to underpin their own civilization by going back to Troy.
Yep.
It's Mercury who comes to
I see.
Aeneas and says, "Snap out of it, mate. Come on,
Yeah.
you've got a job to do." And so he leaves. But that's also another interesting. So these two stories go hand in hand symmetrically. We need to talk about them almost in tandem. When
Cool.
Odysseus, I can't remember the location. It's not the traditional location of the Greek entrance into the underworld,
Mm.
which is in northwestern Greece.
Mm.
It's in northwestern Greece on the mainland. It's a river by the name of Acheron, which apparently turned into the river Styx, which is where
Think so.
Charon, the ferryman, would guide souls within this, nebulous terrain down there, which all had, place names. It's all mapped out. Dante picks all of this up later
Yeah.
on when he writes the Inferno as part of his Divine Comedy. So that's all. It's all implied in the text. He has
Mm.
to offer sacrifices to the dead,
Mhm.
Odysseus. He wants to call up the prophet Tiresias,
Mhm.
who will give him the encouragement that he needs to get home.
Mm.
And how does he do that? By offering the blood of animals for them to drink. So they're thirsty.
Mm.
They need sustenance in the afterlife because they are like ghosts. They all
Mm.
come. It's quite eerie. I wonder why
Mm.
this. I
Mm.
don't think Christopher
Yeah.
Nolan is going to adapt this into the film next year. And I wish he would, right?
I
Let's
wish he
see if
would
he
too.
does. Let's see if he
It's
does.
a phenomenal scene.
It's a phenomenal scene. And Tiresias gives him information about his future.
Mm.
Now you have the sense in which the underworld, the realm of the dead, is a place where time and space are manipulated.
Oh,
There's no linearity here.
okay.
Tiresias will tell him, you're going to make it home, but you're going to have difficulty, right? And he
Okay.
does have difficulty to get to
Mm.
Ithaca. He's the king of Ithaca.
Yeah.
Um, but this is an important nuance now,
Mm.
because not only is it relevant for Rome later on that the place of the dead is outside of time and space, which means that if you access according to these ancient texts, Christians will tell you do not access it because it's dangerous, right? Uh, but if one is given access, because some saints are, for example, in the Christian tradition, given access. If you're given access to that realm of the dead,
Mm.
you can get information that
Mm.
might help you uh, in your journey forward, right?
Mm.
And he's given that information. Now, if you jump 800 years to Aeneas's journey, which happens in Book 6 of the Aeneid, again, his divine mission is to found Latium, which will be, it's the bedrock for the city of Rome and the
That's right.
Roman Empire. His father dies on this journey away from Troy and all of the things that happen in between. But when he does finally make it to the entrance of the underworld, he goes in. And when he goes in to the underworld,
Yeah.
he encounters Queen Dido, who he was just living with as a shade, and he realized that she had, you know, trigger warning, she had committed suicide because
Right.
of the fact that he left her. And she left her husband to be with him, and it's Cupid's fault because he
Oh,
put a love
yes.
spell.
That's right.
And she sees, like, these are very haunting scenes.
Yeah.
She sees Aeneas and
Mm.
covers her face and recoils
That's
into the
right.
shade of her husband. What's
Yeah.
going on here, mate? Like,
Yeah.
this is just
Wow.
remarkable stuff. And he finds his father Anchises down there. Now, his father
Mm.
is now a prophetic like figure who tells him, you keep going, and
Mm.
eventually from your lineage will come
Mm.
Julius Caesar,
Mm.
Augustus Caesar. There's a
Augustus. Yeah.
propaganda, right, of
Yeah. Yeah.
Augustus, who will
Yeah.
extend the Roman Empire beyond the limits of the sun.
Love it.
You know,
Love
well,
it.
now he's got the encouragement. Well, my descendants are going to conquer the world. Roma caput mundi, Rome, the head of the world. All of these sorts of things, right? Um, but this politicization of the motif still nevertheless points to the fact that the underworld was considered a place where time and space, you could tell the future from that vantage point, and the future was disclosed to him. In the interim between the Odyssey and the Aeneid, you have a lot of Greek writers
Yeah.
compiling texts that will influence Rome. And Greco-Roman is pretty much hand in glove. We know that the
Mm.
Romans took the Greek gods and all of these sorts of things. And if you look at some of these figures, like Hercules, for example, son of Zeus and Alcmene, the princess,
Mm.
um, out of the labors that he had to undertake as penance for uh, murdering his family, which happened under like the mania, that spell that was placed upon him by Hera.
Mhm.
If you ever watched the Kevin Sorbo series as a young person, do you remember Hercules, The Adventures of Hercules?
I do. I do.
Yeah, you'll know that Hera is the thorn in his side. She hates him
Yes,
because
yes,
he's
yes,
an
yes, yes.
illegitimate son, right?
Yes.
She reminds
Yes.
him of Zeus's, meandering
Infidelity.
ways
Yes.
and infidelities. So yeah, that's
Yeah, I
all. That's
remember. I
all.
remember. Oh my
That's all
God.
part of it. Yeah,
Yeah.
and he does. He fights the Nemean lion. He fights the Hydra,
Mm.
the Linnaean Hydra, all these beasts, and he's victorious.
Yes.
Hercules gets a bad rap. He's quite a good hero.
Yeah.
When he goes into the underworld, his 12th and final labor
Yes.
commissioned, he was commissioned to do this by a particular king. I forget his name. Uh, it- yeah, I forgot his name.
Yeah.
Um,
Can't remember.
he um, he has to retrieve the three-headed dog Cerberus,
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
okay, who makes an appearance again in Dante's Inferno, sucking on the heads of
Oh,
Judas and Brutus, the
goodness me.
betrayers, the worst of all sins to betray. So the underworld, like, it's negative by and large throughout these texts. I mean, you can get some positive information down there. In Virgil's Aeneid, the Elysian Fields are mentioned where the heroes go. By and large, it's negative for everybody. By and large, it's a reflection not only of the place where bodies are interred,
Mm.
but because of the dreamlike sequences and the foretelling of the
Mhm.
future, it's the realm of the subconscious too,
Okay.
because of the disordered state of the subconscious. There's order in the disorder. Often in some of these texts, secrets of the gods are revealed through dreams. So you have to think
Yeah.
about layers of underworldedness. There's a topographical underworld, which is where bodies go when they're buried.
Mm.
There's the mythologization of that into a place where, there are territories, certain evil people go here, other sinners go there, etc. That begins with Virgil and it's expounded at length by Dante. But then there's also the psychological slash spiritual underworld
Mm.
of the subconscious, and they all intertwine.
Okay.
Um, but Odysseus, when he goes into the underworld, not Odysseus, when Hercules goes into the underworld, he demands Cerberus from Hades. On the way down, he does go via Charon, and he sees the Gorgon Medusa, her
Right.
spirit down there, who was slain by Perseus, the great hero. Perseus actually gets upgraded to Olympus, I believe, in the myths, because he's a very good hero. He's not as if you have a scale, Perseus is very good, Hercules is in the middle, and Theseus is not so good, right?
Okay.
But he sees also Theseus, who destroyed the Minotaur down there, and he saves Theseus from the underworld because Theseus was trapped because him and his friend Perithous went down there in order to steal Persephone, Hades' bride.
Yes.
Okay, so there's all these interesting things.
I
Anyway,
know.
Her Herc is successful. He gets
Okay.
Cerberus and takes him out. So his is an example of a successful foray into the underworld.
Mm.
So is Aeneas, and so is Odysseus. A very unsuccessful foray into the underworld from this period is undertaken by Orpheus.
Orpheus. Now, before we get to Orpheus, though, the difference between Odysseus and Hercules and Aeneas, I think, is that Odysseus doesn't actually physically go into a
Yeah,
descent. He is psychologically inducing this state at the entrance of the underworld. You
yeah,
know what? When you were saying how it's a harrowing scene, it's just I would love to see a cinematic expression of this. Um, that's where he also meets, and when you were saying it's negative, that's where he also meets the other heroes. He meets the Greek heroes. Um,
he does. Yeah, he
and
sees
they're all very despondent, and they're telling him that this is just not worth it.
he sees Achilles, for
Yeah,
example.
Achilles, that's right.
And you go, what was it all for? Yeah, yeah, the futility of war, the
Right.
futility of the strivings in this life which lead to suffering and cause one ultimately to suffer in the end because you're going to die. I mean, there's a realism in the Greek myths, and you're
Mm.
very right. It's a very important point to make that Odysseus does not cross the threshold. It's too
Yes.
dangerous.
Right. Right.
Um, whereas and
Hercules does, and so does
Hercules does,
Aeneas.
but Hercules is a demigod.
That's right.
And
He's
it's
got
this
permission. He's got sanction. He can go into.
He can
Uh,
do it. He can
so
do it.
Hades gives him that permission, I think.
Yeah, you're
And
right.
the king's name, I just looked it up. Is it Eurystheus?
Yes, that's it. That's it. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I get him mixed up with Polydectes, who was the one who sent our friend Perseus on the mission to fight the
Right. Yeah.
Gorgon. Um, and so, in all of these cases, you have a hero reaching the nadir that transforms them for the rest of their journey,
Mm,
right? So Hades also represents the lowest point in the hero's journey. If the hero's journey is understood as the hero going out into the world from inauspicious beginnings, or even like in the case of Hercules, they were auspicious, but from, not really doing much
mm,
to embarking on a mission, undertaking an adventure. But the lowest point is the point of transformation, and that's usually the most difficult point. This is all very relevant for Jesus later as well. So in Hercules, it's his final labor. He succeeds, and then thereafter he goes and he becomes a king and he marries and he does all of these sorts of things, right?
yes.
Um, in the case of Aeneas, again, he goes on and he founds Rome. So it's
That's
it's
it.
that point that the transformation takes place is at the lowest point of their journey, which in some cases is to be literally in hell.
Mm,
It's only psychologically speaking when we experience hell that, God willing, we're given a choice to either rise up or to remain there. So this is all based on psychology too.
mm.
And in the case of Orpheus, though, it is a failure
It
because of
is.
his mistrust,
Right.
his doubt.
Let's just pause for a second. We,
Uh,
we need to clarify one little thing because I mentioned Hades thinking about the god of the underworld, and we've also talked about Hades as in hell, the place.
yes,
So I think we there's an interchangeable usage there, and we have to kind of be aware. So for Hercules, he meets Hades, who is the
in
god of the underworld
Tartarus.
in
He meets
Tartarus.
Hades within Tartarus, which is the Greek term for the underworld, which is given very like the Duat in ancient Egypt. It's given different terms.
Yep.
Um, Hades
Hmm.
becomes in the Christian epoch, and you see it in the apocryphal literature,
Yes.
and it's there in the New Testament too,
Okay.
generalized as hell.
Yeah.
Because in the Jewish context, you have two terms for this kind of place
Mhm.
of post-mortem suffering: Gehenna, the
Yes.
place of fiery torment,
Yes.
and Sheol, which is the pit.
Yes.
And Jesus refers to Gehenna,
Yes.
doesn't really refer to Sheol. It's there in the Old Testament, though.
Yeah.
And then the Greek writers of the New Testament speak about Adi, Hades, Hades, as the general place. That divests Hades of his personality.
Mm.
Because although this is complicated and we move into another area, the word hell, mind you, is a daughter of Loki in
That's right.
Scandinavian mythology. So
That's right.
she's an infernal goddess, and that's where we get hell
That's right.
from Scandinavian mythology. So to pass out the terms that way
Mm.
is very important.
Yeah.
Um, in the Jewish conception, as we said, it's there are some who believe that there is an experience, a post-mortem experience, um, and you get really for the first time this belief that the body is restored with the soul. The
Mm.
experiences that we've been talking about up until now, right?
Mm.
When an average mortal dies, their soul goes into the underworld. There's this
Mm.
dualism in the
Mm.
human constitution, yeah, body soul makeup.
Mm.
Um, in the case of the heroes, they go in and out, and they experience in the best case scenario what we call an apotheosis. They are made godlike or divinized
Mm.
as a reward for their efforts. That's the case of Hercules. It's the case of Perseus.
Yes.
It's not the case for Orpheus. It's not the case for
Mm.
Aeneas or Odysseus. They die, and their reward would be the Elysian fields. Their
Right. Okay.
soul, their soul. And what gives Perseus and Hercules access is that they're demigods.
Mm.
So it's like the mortal part of them is transfigured or transformed.
Mm.
Orpheus is murdered
So
by the Irenaeus, the sirens. His was a catastrophic fate, but he was also a,
yeah,
a demigod in a
let's
sense.
let's get into Orpheus. That's a fascinating myth.
It is because it's a tragic love story.
Mm.
Orpheus is the son of Apollo, illegitimate son of Apollo, with one of the muses. I can't remember which muse it was.
Mm.
Maybe if you've got the ability to
Let
look
me
it up
just check it out.
there. um, and he is the patron of music in ancient Greek mythology.
Mhm.
His lyre, which is a stringed instrument,
Mhm.
was said to tame the animals and the beasts. Uh, he falls in love with Eurydice and he marries her. And on the day of their wedding, it depends on the recension of the myth. She dies tragically after going into the field and being bitten by vipers. So this demigod who can tame nature, tame the beasts, soothe the hearts of brutish persons as well. There's that kind of symbolism. He's heartbroken,
Mm.
and so he entreats. He gets permission to enter Hades in order to to enter Tartarus in order to plead his case with Hades, and he finds the access point to Tartarus. He goes across the river Styx, and he also softens the heart of the ruler of the underworld, Hades and
Right.
Persephone.
Because his entry is really interesting. It's not with brute force or with wit. It's with music.
That's right. His song it shapes reality.
Right. Okay.
So he generates order out of chaos by singing
Wow.
and by playing his instruments. So that also will open the portal to
Mhm.
have access to the underworld.
Wow.
And when he makes it to the depths, he soothes the heart of Hades and entreats that his wife be returned to him. And he says, "You can have her on one condition, that
Mm.
you don't look back until you exit my realm." And
Mm.
so, he's walking and he can't hear any footsteps. He doesn't know if she's there. And as he gets to the exit, just before he crosses the threshold, he looks back and then he sees her being pulled back, into into Tartarus, and he
Yeah.
loses her forever, you know.
I'm getting goosebumps
So am I,
now.
because it's a phenomenal tale. Um, he ends up upsetting one of the gods by not, I think, is it uh, Diana or Demeter, one of the goddesses.
Right. Okay.
Um, and he's um, he's killed by the Furies.
Mm.
Um, and his fate is for his head to be removed and to continue prophesying at the place um, where his head was put in a sanctuary about coming events. So
Mm.
much so that people would go to his head instead of Apollo's temple at Delphi, and Apollo came and told him to shut up. So that's all in the myths, right? And this is all. It's if you look at Apollodorus's library, for example, these classical Greek texts, you find fragments of these myths scattered throughout. If you want a compilation of all of these myths, you can't go past Robert Graves's The Greek Myths, where
Yeah.
they're all compiled with annotations that tell you where, because there's no real,
Yes.
you know, uh, from beginning to end of all of
No.
these myths. They're scattered throughout various texts that
That's right.
describe various things. So that's Orpheus's tale.
Oof. Wow. So it's a failed attempt, tragic, and it's a tale about, well, I mean, I'm watering it down a little bit, but it's about mistrust or our inability, well, and his inability to ultimately trust that she's behind him and
That's
trust the word of Hades that he's made a pact and he's not going to break it.
Yeah,
But he
that's right.
breaks the pact
He breaks the pact by
through
looking
his
back.
mistrust.
It's a bit like Lot and his wife. Lot looks back and she turns into a pillar of salt. Because remember, the angel said, "Don't look back,
That's
get
right.
out of Sodom and Gomorrah."
Yeah.
So these things are cross-cultural in a sense. These motifs, they recur.
Mm.
The
Yes, they do.
the Christian narrative, however,
Mm.
it does something else with all of this.
Yeah, let's
It
get
does.
into it.
Let's get into it. Okay, all
Yeah.
right. Well, what shall we? Where do you begin with Jesus? I mean, uh,
Of course.
you know.
Mm,
He
mm,
does mention in the parables, that
mm.
there'll be weeping and gnashing of teeth in that place where
Yeah.
people are cast if they continue to sin. He does mention these things.
Yes, it does.
Um, Jesus, first century AD, okay. The prophesied, according to Christian belief, Son of Man. That's how he describes himself, as the Son of Man.
Yes.
Ios anthropou ben Adam.
Mm.
What is his mission?
Mm.
How do we summarize
Mm.
who Jesus represents himself as based on the only extant evidence that we have from a documentary point of view? Now,
Yeah.
as a Christian myself, I believe that he appears to saints. So, I'm biased, but if you want a documentary, stick to the historical. We just have the New Testament, and any attempt to do gymnastics around it,
Mm.
to look for earlier sources that have disappeared, to construct from the existing sources a Jesus of history apart from the Christ of faith. In other words, a mere man who lived and died, and then his disciples made up, I don't know what about him. It's all rubbish. It's all conjecture. You either accept it as it is or you don't, and that's fine. It's fine not to. It's each their own. But let's put aside these stories of him as a revolutionary and
Oh, I'm
none of.
more than happy to do that. Don't you
Yeah,
worry.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, and then we can get into the nitty gritty of it. So
Mm. Mm.
with Christ,
Mm.
um, there is this anticipation, there is this expectation, especially under Roman occupation,
Mm.
that a son of David, so a descendant of King David's lineage, King David being the paradigmatic king of Israel, who
Yeah.
united the 12 tribes of Israel, who set in motion the events that would lead to his son Solomon constructing the temple in Jerusalem,
That's right.
which is where God dwells. That's the benchmark time for the people of Israel, right?
Yep.
So, in times of subsequent distress, when the temple is destroyed in the 700s for the first time by the Assyrians, um,
Yep.
it's rebuilt in the 6th century after the Babylonian exile, and it's destroyed a second time by the Romans in the 1st century. So before this happens, they want a ruler like David to come to
Mm.
overthrow their oppressive enemies, which
Mm.
in consecutive order are Assyrians, Babylonians, Greeks, and Romans, right?
Mm.
Um,
So
and uh,
let's do a little shout out to the Persians
and the Persians,
who actually did um, liberate the Jews and let them go back and rebuild their temple.
King Cyrus,
King Cyrus the Great. Yeah,
absolutely,
hooray!
absolutely. He, that is a providential intervention.
Mm.
It's a providential
Well, it's in the
intervention.
Bible,
It's in the
so
Bible. Yeah,
you know
it is. It is.
it's right there. Sorry,
Absolutely.
I being a
No,
Persian, I can't
absolutely.
help myself.
You must, and this is enriching and a rich culture. I mean, it has to be mentioned. I
Yeah.
mean, we're doing a bit of an injustice. We're not looking at Zoroastrianism. We're not doing that because
Oh,
we
that's
just got to
okay. That's
got to
okay.
keep it limited.
Yeah, we do.
But that's also very important,
Mm.
for eschatology and for all of these things that we're
Yeah.
talking about Zoroastrianism. But anyway, we'll get back to this context. So, Son of David is a term of hope for the people
Mm.
of Israel at this time. He'll be like David. He'll restore the kingdom of Israel to its freedom and to
Mm.
God.
Yeah.
This is a term that's used in relation to Jesus because he's doing all of these bizarre things like
Uh-huh.
healing the sick and exorcising the possessed,
Mm.
casting away evil spirits, all this. So he must be the son of David.
Mm.
Jesus himself is ambivalent in relation to this title. He accepts it, but he calls himself Son of Man.
Yeah.
Who's the Son of Man? Well, we know in the Old Testament book of Daniel, which
Mm.
is written in maybe the 2nd century BC, but it recalls stories from the Babylonian exile
Yes.
that the prophet Daniel sees
Mm.
a figure standing before the Ancient of Days.
Mm.
And this Ancient of Days is God the Father for Christians, right?
Mm.
And he presents to a man who's standing before him
Mm.
authority over all kingdoms and all nations and all peoples. That's the Son of Man.
Mm.
And when Jesus calls himself Son of Man, he does point to his connection with human beings, right? The Son
Mm.
of God who's become the Son of Man. But he's also saying, I'm this person that the God the Father has given authority over everything to.
Mm.
right? He prays to his Father who's in heaven. He gives us the Our Father. So there's a heaven.
Mm.
He refers to the kingdom of heaven as having come near in his person.
Yes.
In the beginning of the gospel, according to St. Mark,
Mm.
metanoite igiken gari vasilia ton uranon. The kingdom of heaven has come near.
Yes.
Where? Wherever
Mm.
Jesus walks, there it is, right?
Mm. Mm.
So that's all interesting because heaven and earth are intersected in his presence.
Yes.
And then there's that place where people are cast out. And he mentions that
Mm.
also very emphatically in the Gospel according to St. Matthew, chapter 25, the parable of the Last Judgment.
Mm.
And you have this real binding together of behavior in this life with outcomes,
Mm.
eternal outcomes. You know, the last days when the Son of Man comes and all the angels within, he will separate the sheep from the goats.
That's
Okay.
right.
And he will say to those on his right hand, the
Mm.
sheep, blessed are you, for when I was hungry, you fed me. When I was thirsty, you gave me something to drink. When I was naked, you clothed me. When... So on and so forth. But
Mm.
Lord, when did we see you hungry and give you something to eat, or thirsty and give you something to drink?
Mm.
Most assuredly, I tell you, insofar as you have done it to the least of these, my brethren, you've done it to me.
That's right. Yeah.
Away from me, evildoers who are cursed to the fire that the devil and his angels will be thrown into, because when I was hungry, you did not give me
Mm.
something to eat. When I was thirsty, you did not give me something to drink, because they didn't help others.
Mm.
So you have this uh, association of our conduct in this life
Mm.
conditioning a certain outcome in the next.
Yeah.
Now, that's also a complicated thing.
Mm.
It's complicated by the image of fire.
Okay.
Why is it complicated by the image of fire? And I'm sorry to do this, and I think I just have to do it
Do it.
because I just have to talk about it because
Do it, man. Do it.
oh God, oh Lord have mercy. Okay, there is a sense in
Mm.
which God is experienced as fire, as warmth in the Christian testimony,
Okay.
and that's there in the Gospel according to Saint Luke
Mm.
on the road to Emmaus. So. Um, just to be on this motif of fire, and we'll return to what Jesus does and how that's elaborated. But there is a belief um, that is predicated on the road to Emmaus narrative. When after the crucifixion takes place and the resurrection, Jesus appears walking beside Cleopas and an unnamed disciple, and they are
Mm.
forlorn.
Mm.
And he's incognito. And he says, why
Mm.
are you sad? Oh, are you
Mm.
the only stranger in Jerusalem these days? Do you not know what happened? Jesus of Nazareth, a prophet, mighty before God, was put to death by our people, but we thought he would be the one to redeem Israel. In other words, we thought he'd overthrow the Romans and kick their butts and all of that, right? And then he upbraids them and he says, don't you know that the Son of Man had to? And he explains the scripture to them that he had to suffer according to the Old Testament prophecies in Isaiah, the
Mm.
suffering servant who takes upon himself the sins of the people
Yes.
and makes expiation to God on their behalf. Anyway, it's getting late, and they invite this stranger into their home, and he comes into their home and he sits down to have meal with them, and then he picks up bread and he breaks it. And as he
Mm.
breaks the bread, they see him, and it's Jesus, and then he
Wow.
disappears from their sight.
Wow.
And they say, were not our hearts burning within us as he unveiled the scriptures to us?
Mm.
Now, that you could take it metaphorically, but according to the ensuing literature, the mystical literature of the church, when dovetailed with some of the more cosmological reflections of patristic authors like Gregory of Nyssa, this is meant to be taken very literally. It's a fire in the heart.
Mm.
That in the case of the saints who fight against the passions and participate in Jesus very directly, it becomes an overwhelming fire. And it's assimilated to the burning bush scenario, where
Mm.
Moses sees God in the burning bush.
Yeah.
Okay. So their hearts were burning as they saw Jesus breaking the bread as well, which is a Eucharistic image.
Mm.
So in Jesus, there is this positive experience of fire.
Mm.
Do you not know that I have come to bring fire on the earth, and how I wish that it were already kindled, Jesus says.
Mm.
People misinterpret that in the hellfire, he's going to burn the earth.
Mm.
No, it's the mystical fire.
Yeah.
of the experience of God. And fire and light become interchangeable. If you talk about Orthodoxy and Catholicism,
Yeah.
they will speak respectively about the Taboric light
Yeah.
and the beatific vision.
Yeah.
It's light and fire.
Yeah.
And God is there in the flame, and God is there in the light.
Mm.
And there's a sense in which the
Mm.
tradition speaks about that post-mortem experience as well.
Mm.
Those who get close to Jesus in this life by imitating him, by worshipping him in an ecclesiastical framework and participating in his very life, that fire will entrench itself and will lead to a positive experience in the afterlife, um, so much so that they won't feel it as a judgment.
Mm-hmm.
But those who don't, who are essentially not good to others, right, and who don't love God and all of that, will experience that fire as hell,
Mm.
right? And that brings into the conversation the topic of purgatory. And is that a permanent experience of hell? Does it have a time limit? And it's another topic on its own. It's
Yes.
another topic on its own. What is interesting in relation to Jesus's narrative
Mm-hmm.
is that he undertakes his mission. Okay, he calls himself Son of Man. He accepts the title Son of God, that he's the Son of God the Father, that in some way, which is elaborated later on in the church, he is both one with God the Father and distinct from him, that he is God's agent in both, according to John's Gospel, the creation of the cosmos and in its consummation, in its transformation at the end times. But now he's on earth, this eternal Son and Word of God the Father, Logos, the
Mm.
cosmic organizational principle that arranges the whole universe and creates it together with the Father. It's a term taken from Greek mythology.
Mm.
If Jesus is these things, as John says, he's the Logos. In the beginning was the Logos, and the Logos was God, and the Logos was with God, and all things were made through the Logos. Then
Yeah.
heaven, earth, and even the underworld are made through the Logos.
Mm.
So the paradox is,
Mm.
we don't, Christians don't believe that Jesus was born 2,000 years ago and that started his life. They believe he was always there, but that
Mm.
he paradoxically became human 2,000 years ago while remaining what he was always, the Son
Mm-hmm.
of God the Father, right?
Yeah.
If he was always the Son of God the Father and the Father created the universe together with the Son and the Spirit to give it a Trinitarian spin,
Mm-hmm.
then all the realms are created by the Trinitarian God
Mm.
through the Son.
Yeah.
And the Son takes on flesh. And by taking on flesh, which is a microcosm connected to the whole universe, he's taken on everything.
Mm.
Heaven, earth, and the underworld are in Jesus.
Mm.
And it's not a scandal to say it, because he himself, when he's crucified and dies
Mm.
on the cross, and he's buried in a tomb, right?
Mm.
Which is where we said all the reflections
Yeah.
in relation to the underworld begin in the tomb. People are
Yeah.
buried in the ground. That's where they go. Here, the Jewish approach towards burial is the tomb and then anointing the body with spices and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
What is going on in that tomb? Well, that was
Mm.
the question for the earliest Christians, because,
Mm.
the gospel narratives do not describe what happens within the tomb,
Mm.
and the ones that did were rejected.
Right. Okay.
We cannot make sense of what happens there. But you have intimations. Jesus keeps speaking about the fact that, look, the common problem of human beings is death, it's mortality.
Mm.
And this death, as we know from St. Paul's writings, came into the world because of sin.
Mm.
The wages of sin are death.
Yeah.
I'm going to destroy both sin and death because he's
Mm.
sinless. Jesus says, he's going to do it both. But don't tell anybody yet.
Mm.
Wait until after the Son of Man is crucified and comes back from the dead.
Right.
So he's crucified. The disciples are scattered. Only John remains by his side when he's on the cross. He
Mm.
dies and his friends abandon him, and only Mary and John are there, and some of
Mary
the
and
women
John. Yeah.
disciples. And here's the great, if you want feminism, here's the greatest example of the overturning of social conventions, because the women are here courageous. And
Mm.
they come to the tomb on the third day to anoint his body.
Yeah.
And the first to encounter the resurrected Jesus is Mary Magdalene.
Mary Magdalene. Yeah.
So the beauty in these texts is beyond comprehension. Right? It's
Oh
just
yeah.
remarkable.
Yeah.
And she finds the tomb empty. They see an angel or two, depending on the account.
Mm.
And Jesus is not there. Okay, he's gone ahead of the disciples into Galilee, and a message in one of the gospel accounts is go and tell the disciples and Peter about this.
Yes.
Where are they? They should have been here, right? That kind of thing. Okay. Um,
Hmm.
and then you have Mary in John's gospel encountering Jesus first. You have Peter and John running to the tomb.
Yes.
It's that space in between that we're interested in for the descent into Hades motif.
Right. Okay.
Because although Matthew's gospel, for example, says that when Jesus dies on the cross, some of the saints who were recently buried come out of their graves and are seen in Jerusalem. And the curtain of the temple is torn in two, and the sky goes
Yeah.
dark. All these cosmic things, right? Because the one who created the universe is now dead on the cross, and the universe is suffering with him, convulsing with him. Because paradoxically, he is within the universe, and the universe is within him. Within him,
Mm.
he's buried, and the conception of the church is something like this. Now, can the creator of the universe, God, die? Does that not mean the end of the universe?
Mm.
Well, according to his divine nature, which
Mm.
is immortal and eternal,
Mm.
that the Son of God the Father shares with the Father and the Spirit,
Mm.
Jesus doesn't die.
Mm.
But because the Son and Word of God the Father personally took on flesh permanently,
Mm.
insofar as that body that he took to himself is capable of suffering and dying, he really suffers and he really dies.
Yeah.
So, yes, Jesus is dead in the tomb,
Yeah.
and God is, in his essence, not affected by that in terms of the divine nature, but personally, the Father and the Spirit do share in the Son's suffering.
Mm.
So, when the Son and Word of God the Father takes on the human body, he takes on everything associated with the body apart from sin. He takes on a mind, he takes on a soul, he takes on a will.
Mm.
And the human soul that Jesus has
Mm.
went into the underground,
Mm.
went into the underworld.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
But this is the soul of the Son of God.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not Hercules.
No.
It's not Odysseus. And so you have the supercharging of this motif now,
Yeah.
that everyone who died up until Jesus is in there, because Jesus is the one who's going to overturn the curse of death,
Mm.
which leads to sin and to this aimless, maybe torturous existence. I don't know how much that applies to the prophets and the saints, but they're all in this intermediate state in the underground, right?
Mm.
The Gospels don't describe it, but the apocryphal texts,
Yeah.
like the Proto-Evangelium of no, the Gospel of Nicodemus, sorry, the Gospel of
Gospel of
Nicodemus,
Nicodemus. Yeah.
and the Acts of Pilate do.
Yeah.
And what they say is they create a narrative
Mm.
where Hades is personified, but he's the realm, he's not the god.
That's right. No,
He's
that's
talking,
important for us.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's important. And Satan is down there too, but Satan he's got access and egress, he can come and go.
Yeah.
And Satan, who tried to, he's tempted Christ, he kind of knows who he is, but it's veiled from him as well.
Mm.
He's not really bothered. And Hades is saying, we're in trouble. He's coming. He's coming. Who's coming? Oh, he's nobody. No, no, we're in trouble, and your whole system is about to collapse with your demons and everything else, right?
Mm.
And the bars of Hades, right? The
Yeah.
bars on the
Yeah.
doors are being bashed, and
Yeah.
the angels are announcing, "Open up the gates of brass so that the King of Glory can come in."
That's right.
Who is this King of Glory? Satan answers, "The Lord strong and mighty in battle." And Christ smashes down the doors, and he picks up Adam and
Mm.
Eve, and he
That's
takes
right.
them out.
Yeah.
And along with Adam, who is the forefather of human beings, and Eve, who is the foremother, he takes all human beings who had passed before his coming out of hell with them. And he binds Satan and leaves him in the underworld,
Mm.
right? As he comes up to resurrect. So with his resurrection, he has opened up the gates of heaven and resurrected Adam and Eve and all the righteous who died before his coming. As the Son of God, it's not enough for him to merely enter Hades and emerge transformed. He has to destroy it.
Mm.
And he does destroy it within himself and in his person. And for those who participate in him, the belief is that, Christ has accomplished all these things within himself.
Mm.
And we can participate in them if we participate in him.
That's
But
right.
if we don't, then hell is still a reality. That seems to be the trajectory of church tradition thereafter, with a lot of nuances and clarifications.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a very beautiful icon associated with this.
Yeah.
I forget the name of it. Um,
It's the icon of the Anastasis, yeah,
Anastasis.
Anastasis, the
Yeah,
resurrection,
yeah,
which
yeah.
is in the Church of Holy Savior in Hora,
Mm.
which is no longer a church. It was a museum and it became a mosque. Is it the Fatih Mosque? Chami. Anyway, it's in Istanbul, and it
Okay.
has Jesus in white, his
Mm.
soul,
Mm.
taking Adam and Eve and pulling them towards himself with the mandorla. I'll put it up in the video
Yeah,
so
yeah.
that
That'll be
so that
good.
people can see it.
Good.
And that's where this motif was really for Christians, for the church, solved. You can't do it. The acknowledgement is you can't do it on your own. Jesus will do it all for you.
Mm.
And there is this hope given that, you know, even though hell is a psychological reality, as we know,
Mm.
it's a physical reality, whether considered from a spiritual point of view or uh, let's say, a psychological point of view. Um, Nevertheless, it can be avoided. Or it can be solved. It can be solved for the human person with not just with what Jesus has done, but also with the final consummation at the end times with his second coming, where all of this will be resolved and the
Mm.
universe will be transformed in light of his grace. Now, again, that's another complicated topic uh, because of recent trends in scholarship who speak about, well, can hell exist in such a framework? Well, the church will say that it can, with caveats,
Mm.
but this whole universalism thing, I think, is out of the scope of our discussion.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Or we can do it maybe another time. I'm happy
Another
to talk
time.
to you
Yeah,
anytime you like, Milad.
for sure.
I'm enjoying this. So
Sounds really good.
yeah,
We shall do that. And I was just looking up that icon, and there's interesting. I don't know if I can share. Maybe I can share
yeah.
just briefly. And everyone can see that. This is the icon, I guess. Can you see that?
That's it. That's modeled on the one in Holy Savior
Yeah, yeah.
in
This is
Hora.
just a version. There's various versions, obviously, as you guys can see. But also, what I noticed was the halo is almond shaped. It's there's something interesting going on there. But yeah, that's Adam, that's Eve, and beneath him, Hell or Hades,
Yeah.
defeated.
If you click on the one just next to it on the right,
That's it.
that's it. That's perfect. You'll see Satan at the bottom, bound,
Oh, wow, yeah.
yeah, with the doors, and sometimes those doors are put in the shape of a cross. But this is the Korah. This is the Korah icon.
Mm,
And the belief then in the Christian church is that the devil has been defeated, but is permitted to tempt human beings in order for them to realize their sinfulness and
mm,
return to Jesus. It's not a dualism. It's not like God versus the devil.
mm,
That battle is over, right? It's Gregory of Nyssa speaks about it as though he's like a pig with a ring in its nose that God will let off the hook. He'll let the
mm.
ring go for it to run around a bit, then he'll capture it again. As a
Right.
wake up call to human beings. Um,
Mm,
so you know, yeah, and then this motif. I mean, it comes up again. It's there in all of the hagiographic literature, so that's another topic
yeah.
because there are saints who have visions of these experiences and who sometimes enter into these realms and come back and talk about them.
Right.
There is the narrative, and I mean, it's a narrative, so it's not a literal representation of heaven, earth, and the underworld in Dante's Divine Comedy.
That's right.
So,
Yeah.
which is its own thing, and then you have the inescapability of this motif and its pattern in
Right.
almost all epic narrative structures.
Yeah. So a massive one for our kind of modern era, I think, is Tolkien.
Absolutely.
And also I realized James Joyce wrote Ulysses.
I've never read
I
Ulysses.
haven't read it either,
Yeah.
but I realized just searching, doing some background, looking into this theme, I've realized, oh my goodness, how remiss of me. but I think I might have to look at that.
Yeah,
Um,
likewise.
but of course, as everyone is aware, Jungian archetypes and hierarchies is also a big part of our modern consciousness, modern psychology, our understanding of ourselves and the world, etc. Do you want to say a little bit about Tolkien since you mentioned it in your article?
Oh yeah, yeah, I'd love to. And so a lot of these things, apart from the article, I'm grateful that you've mentioned it. They are in my first book, From the Ancient Near East to Christian Byzantium, which was
Okay,
based on my PhD, published in 2021. And that book, it's on the Cambridge Scholars website, and you can get it with the promo code promo25 for 40% off or something like that, just in
beautiful.
case anyone buys it. I don't know,
Why not?
an old book now. But it talks about these what we just discussed in relation to the founding myths and stories of all the civilizations we
Gotcha.
discussed. So I returned to this material for this article
Okay.
because I wanted to show that in Twin Peaks, you
Yeah.
see the same stuff with the protagonist Dale Cooper. He goes into the underworld and fails like Orpheus, and that's all very deliberate by the show's
Mhm.
creators, Mark Frost and David Lynch. But that's all I want to say about Twin Peaks, because Tolkien is a bigger phenomenon, and they're just about to make another film, The Hunt for Gollum, which is bringing back the cast from Peter Jackson's
Wow.
films, and you've got just to in order to make reference to the fact that it's still in the zeitgeist, you have
Mm.
the next season of the Lord of the Rings show, The Rings of Power, on
Mm.
Amazon. I
Mm.
interviewed the actor who plays Gandalf last year, and so on my channel Terra Symbolica,
Wow.
if anyone's
I'll have
interested,
to
you can
look at
see
that.
that. Daniel Wayman, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
I really enjoyed his representation of Gandalf.
So did I. I thought it was
Mm.
great. I thought it was great.
Mm.
But obviously, literature is much more enriching than the films. And in Tolkien, you have multiple Jesuses at work.
Mm.
Now, it's not as obvious. He's not as on the nose as C.S. Lewis is with
Mm.
Aslan in the Chronicles of Narnia. Um, you have to look for Christ there.
Okay.
Aragorn,
Mm.
who is the heir to the throne of Gondor,
Yeah.
is a messianic figure. He's a
Yeah.
Davidic king. It's
Yeah.
very obvious.
Yeah.
Who is in exile and incognito as Strider,
Mm.
and eventually discloses his identity. It's a bit like Jesus,
Mm.
disclosing who he is gradually. And Aragorn, um, Isildur, who's his ancestor,
Yes.
who is basically Adam,
Mm.
right? Because
Mm.
Isildur, for this narrative, he fell by taking the ring and being ensnared by it.
That's right.
In the way that Adam fell by disobeying God by partaking of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil.
Yeah.
He loses the ring eventually, of course,
Yes.
but he suffers the same temptation as the devil figure or the servant of the devil figure in Tolkien's universe, which is Sauron, right?
Mm.
Morgoth is the actual devil in his cosmogony, but it's Sauron.
Yeah.
So uh, he Aragorn has to undo what Isildur has done by defeating Sauron finally, because the ring makes its way back to him. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what happens in that saga, via Gollum, etc. It gets back to Sauron by the end. That one ring, which contains within itself all of the power of evil and the oppressive, technocratic power of evil, the institutions that oppress and destroy and dehumanize. That's what that ring is
Mm.
for Tolkien. So, um, on this journey, there are multiple descents into hell.
Mm.
Mordor is hell. It's
Mm.
hell.
Yeah.
It's a lava-filled place
You
with.
can't get more obvious than that.
It can't get more obvious, right? And so Sam and Frodo are in
Mm.
hell in
Yeah.
in the latter part of the trilogy
Mm.
of the books and the
It's also where
film
the power of the ring is strongest
in
and harder
hell.
to resist. And they're also in a kind of this shady, hazy mood. They're not quite themselves, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
all there.
I'm just picking up on the themes that we've talked about.
It's all there. It's
Yeah.
all there.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. You're
Mm.
absolutely right.
Mm.
Um, and so there's that. There's Gandalf in the Mines of Moria falling into the pit after
That's
defeating
right.
the Balrog. That's also Descent into Hades motif, and he comes out transformed. That's Jesus again. right?
Gandalf the
It's
White.
Gandalf the White. Okay,
Mm.
so it's like a conflation of the Transfiguration on Mount Tabor.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
remember, he's shining when they
Oh,
see
it's
him.
beautiful. Yeah, I know.
I've got
Yeah,
goosebumps again. What are you
yeah,
doing
yeah,
to
I
me
know.
today? He's
Me too.
shining.
I love that scene.
Same,
In
same,
the movie, I love that scene. But
same.
of course, yeah.
So there's that. But Aragorn is where it's really at because he has to undo the curse
Mm,
placed upon the king of the dead and his men,
mm.
because they broke an oath to Isildur.
That's right.
They were meant to fulfill a vow of helping him in battle, and they didn't. And they
Mm,
were cursed, and they stay within the Dwimoberg, this mountain. They're cursed to remain in that place, that haunted place.
yes,
And he needs their help to defeat the devil, Sauron.
that's right.
So he pleads with them and says, if you fulfill your oath to
Mm,
me, I'm Isildur's heir, you'll
mm,
be liberated.
mm.
And that's
That's the.
almost like giving agency
That's right.
to those who are passively in the underworld in the descent into Hades motif in Christianity. It's
Yes.
like it's like a version where Jesus said, "Look, if you want to help, you can.
Yeah, that's right.
If you want to fulfill your duty, you want to make up for what you've done wrong, come with me." It's not that in Christianity.
Of
In
course not.
Christianity, it's you've all failed and I'll fix it because I'm
Yeah,
God's son, right?
that's
But
right.
with Aragorn, he gives him a chance, and in the last moment, as you know from the books and in the film, the King of the Dead does come to the aid of the Rohirrim and the armies of Gondor
That's right.
at the Black Gate, and he's liberated. So it's there. It's in Harry Potter,
Yeah,
very obviously there in
yeah.
the Order of the Phoenix. That's the
Mm,
lowest point in Harry's journey, where
mm,
Sirius Black dies
yeah.
in the basement of the Ministry of Magic in
Mm,
a portal leading to the place of death, that mirror, if you
mm.
remember.
Yeah, I
So
remember. Yeah.
it's there, and then he has to build himself up over the next two,
Mm.
and that's quite epic. Harry Potter.
Yeah.
It's not quite
Oh
Lord
my
of the
God.
Rings,
Yeah.
but it's very,
Yeah.
very nice
Mm.
the way that it's
No,
constructed.
I love Harry Potter.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So do I. So do I. So this is a motif that reappears again and again. And in Twin Peaks, Dale
Mm.
Cooper,
Yeah.
in order to save his
Laura.
beloved Annie and Laura Palmer,
Yeah, Annie and
he
Laura. Yeah.
goes into hell. And I have never seen the underworld
Mm.
depicted in such a they can do what they want with these graphic films, the Hellraisers and everything else. Twin Peaks stayed with me
Mm.
for 15 years.
Mm.
That's why I wrote the article when David Lynch passed away
It
this year.
comes through in the article, like it really, really impacted me. So I just your writing was very very lucid,
Oh,
very
thank you,
very
man.
very lovely. So you captured it really well, and I was like in chills reading it. So
Look, it's scary, but
yeah.
my wife is also an avid Twin Peaks fan, and when we watch these episodes, we talk about, look, I mean, what did Lynch tap into
Yeah,
here
well,
to depict
that's what
this?
I was thinking.
Yeah, because I mean, he shows you that the innocent and the naive
Mm,
cannot face this.
mm,
If you face it, it'll eat you.
yeah,
I mean, that's because Dale Cooper, he's a beautiful character. If you see this character,
yeah,
wonderful spirit and temperament, but his failure is absolute.
yeah.
Um, and so, look, and I think almost you could draw in terms of a line in terms of the way that this descent motif has been depicted, you know,
Mm,
from Odysseus, with Homer in the
mm,
Odyssey. You've got the Aeneid. You've got Jesus, who is like a step above all of it, and then you've
yeah,
got Dante, and then
yeah.
you've got Lord of the Rings, and then you've got Twin Peaks.
Mm,
I really do believe that. It's not quite. It's because it's not literature. It's film,
mm.
but yeah, it's quite a phenomenal representation of these things, Milad.
Interesting. We're I think at time, this
Yeah,
is where you have to take off and get on with the day, and as do I. And I'm very grateful for this opportunity to speak with you, and we're very fortunate to have the ability to take the time to speak to each other. But of course, this is for our higher cause and academic
yeah,
life. So this is not just fun, though it is, of course,
yeah,
pleasurable, and one
absolutely.
of the privileges of being an academic, and I'm grateful for it. My friend, thank you so much again, and I hope to
Thank you.
speak to you again soon on another topic.
I'd
Look
love
forward
to.
to it.
I'm very grateful. Thank you, Milad. Thank you for the invitation and thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you, man.